So I just got to the end of a draft of the novel I've been working on for many years, 17 years actually. But in the past month, I've been arguing with AI to help me finish the novel, and I want to talk about that. So I'm not one of those people that thinks AI can save the world and solve all of life's problems. I'm very skeptical about AI, and I feel like there's so many bad, scary, creepy uses of AI. And then also there's a lot of marketing bullshit going on right now that make you think AI can do everything in any way for all purposes and all uses and all these tasks. I'm very skeptical about all that stuff and nervous about all that stuff. But I do think that AI can be amazing used in the right way for the right reasons in the right situation with the right context. Okay, actually, first let me give you a quick and dirty explanation of the type of AI I've been using. So these are LLMs, large language models, and this is the realm where these AI models have basically slurped up all of the internet, and so they have a huge amount of information. And then there's like a chat bot element, so it can remember a conversation it's having with you, and you give it a prompt. It processes that stuff and figures out how to generate a response in the right way with the right pattern, so it seems to be answering the thing you're trying to ask about. You know, it doesn't know whether it's right or wrong. It's just like, this is how humans talk and process stuff. I'm going to just vomit that stuff back to you in a way that has gotten really good recently. And so sometimes it can be pretty magical. Other times it tells you to eat glue. And the part I find really cool about this AI is an area that I used it for with my novel, which is, when you're using ChatGPT or something like that, I was using Claude, which is Anthropic's AI assistant, just like ChatGPT is OpenAI's assistant. And the prompt is the thing where you stick the questions in, where you talk to it, that chat window. So if you put a ton of useful info about what you're trying to do in the prompt, it can be incredibly useful. So you're not telling it like, hey, write me a novel about blah, blah, blah. That will result in a very non-imaginative result. But if you do say something like, here is my 100,000 word novel draft, now let's talk about it and work through some of the issues I'm concerned about, it can be quite good. I put my whole novel draft into the prompt. So I asked it things about my novel. Like, my novel takes place for the most part in 1938. So I wanted to ask it about the historical accuracy of the events that occur and the things that happen in the day-to-day life of these people. But I also wanted to know about character arc, character growth, and I also wanted to know about how the plot worked and plot holes. And I wanted to know about how well the dialogue worked. These are people in the South in 1938. Did I get that right? Here's my way of thinking about talking to AI in this chat-like way. I think of it kind of like a dysfunctional relationship that you're in. You can't quite trust the person. You don't know if they're full of shit. But the good stuff can be really good in those moments. But the next minute, you could be fighting again. And I feel like the first answers you get when you ask it a question, they can be quite good and revealing. For instance, it pointed out that one song I referenced in 1938 didn't get published until 1939. That's pretty useful information. In the book, I have an explanation for how these people got to listen to the song before it was released. But still, the fact that it caught that impressed me. But it also will say stuff like, well, some of the dialogue isn't quite right. And then you poke at it a little more and you go like, which dialogue? And then it'll be like, oh, my bad. Actually, it looks like it's all right. Sometimes it's the reverse, where it's like, oh, you're brilliant. This character is so well conceived and the character growth is great. And then you're like, what about the time when they get in an argument with, when she gets in an argument with her husband? And then it'll be like, oh, actually, you're right. That was a weird moment. So I had to poke and prod and treat it with a healthy amount of skepticism, but it still got me to some really cool places. Sometimes it gets right to the nugget of the problem, but it often doesn't have like the perfect solution. Like, it'll suggest like, why don't you replace this paragraph with this other paragraph, which fixes the plot hole? And oftentimes the thing it suggested, it tried to get it in my voice, but it didn't quite get it right. And so I'd have to basically retool, rewrite that. But the fact that it got me to the page or the paragraph or the scene, I think is pretty amazing. It's not as good as working with a badass editor on something. At the same time, though, what I love about arguing with AI is, you know, the things when you're like in the shower, or at least let me rephrase that. When I'm in the shower, I always think of these little annoyances and things in my book or things I'm worried about in my book that I'm like, is that stupid? The fact that these two people get in this argument on the front porch. And it's the kind of thing that's maybe not quite important enough for me to have a full-blown conversation with a friend or an editor or an agent. But it's something that crosses my mind. With AI, I don't feel bad about talking about all the stupid, weird little things. Like, do you think this is stupid? Or do you buy that? Or do you think this could be better? All that to say, when you get to the good stuff, just like a dysfunctional relationship, the good stuff is really good. And you have to deal with some bullshit to get there. But I think it can really be worth it, especially if you can feed these AI models all the information and context about what you're doing. And then you start asking it questions and drilling down into some of these issues you're concerned about. What's important to remember is that it's trying to talk like an editor or writer, to respond in a way it thinks you want to hear. It doesn't know if it's right or wrong. So keep in mind that its responses might be kind of shallow by design. Even so, it can cause you to get to these important spots. But I just don't want you to think it can replace an actual thinking human. And don't treat its answers like the absolute truth. Just maybe food for thought or things to think about or help nudge you into the right zone to solve these problems. Keep in mind, though, your mileage will vary about how much you have to pay for these things. For me to like just throw my whole 100,000 word novel into the prompt and get a response and have a conversation, I had to pay for the pro account for a few months to do all of this in one shot. Because when you're chatting with stuff, it has to keep track of that whole conversation. And if you throw a 350-page novel in that conversation, that stuff adds up. If you haven't done this before, my suggestion is that you just use one of these free accounts of ChatGPT or Claude and paste a scene in there and then ask some questions across a few different areas, and you'll see where it is stronger or weaker and where it might help you and where it doesn't. You know, I just, for the hell of it, pasted a transcript from an earlier draft of this video into ChatGPT, and it pointed out one thing I forgot to mention, which is privacy and security. You know, you're uploading all your stuff to these systems, and so you definitely want to check the security and privacy rules for what happens to the data you put in the prompt and decide whether you're comfortable with that policy and with that company. Okay, good luck. Go out there, use AI with a healthy dose of skepticism, but be open to the fact that it might actually help you write a better story.